Audrey Holst with me today. We're going to talk about overcoming perfectionism and the apocalypse. And we're going to do live Q&A. And I have no idea where this conversation is going to go. So, Audrey, super stoked to have you here. First of all, thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for having me. I have no idea where this is going either, and I'm really into it.
So here at Group Coach Nation, in these conversations, Audrey, we like so are thrilled to have an expert like you with us. So Audrey, you and I, when we first started hanging out, we were talking perfectionism and like your passion for that. And like you've built this entire world around helping people overcome perfectionism, deal with perfectionism. And for most of us as entrepreneurs, we're pretty ADHD. We're kind of like super driven. And honestly, we get in our own ways because we don't let go of stuff. We don't, I'm like hearing myself say this out loud. I don't do perfectionism good enough. I don't overcome perfectionism the right way. Can you give me 3 things that I can do to get absolutely right?
Yeah, some people will say, I'm not a perfectionist because I'm like not good enough at doing things to be a perfectionist. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Here we go.
And then Audrey, when you and I were talking a minute ago, you were like, hey, we could talk about just like surviving, overcoming, coming back from the whole apocalypse thing we've all been through. And that just really resonated with me too, because, we feel it right now.
Yes.
Even though things look like they're like actually going to be a better 2022 than we've experienced the past few years. Like it's I'm not going to say kind of, it's actually traumatic. It's been tough. So
yeah.
Let's go wherever we want to go with this. And you folks watching in, if you're live, ask questions, fine. If you're playing the replay, as always, ask your questions in the comments. We'll connect you to Audrey. We'll do the best we can to answer your questions. We talk about group coaching and building masterminds and all that stuff in here a ton. But these mindset conversations and like, how are we doing in our own heads and hearts? This is what powers the train that moves us forward. We got to get this right.
Yeah. Oh, we got to get this right. And you got to do
sorry.
it perfectly.
Oh my God. I can't stop. Okay. Audrey, I'm going to shut up now because that's the safest thing to do. Tell us about perfectionism.
Yeah, I think first of all, just to like start off with, I think that the most important thing, if anybody in this audience is like, oh yeah, perfectionism, I think that there's a lot of the term like A-type, high achiever, high performing. If anybody's ever called you one of those terms, or if you've ever self-identified, you may find yourself in that perfectionism place. And a lot of people I talk to consider themselves, like recovering perfectionists. And the thing I want to say about perfectionism is, like, I'm not here to demonize it. I'm not here to villainize it. I'm not here to say, oh my gosh, if you're a perfectionist, like you got to get that handled because otherwise, your life is going to be terrible. I'm not saying any of those sort of things. I'm saying that if it's something you identify and the impact of it on you is not what you want it to be, then there are ways to shift that and change that. Like that's really what I want to say. And a lot of that is around the concept of what we're oriented to, which is like part of the conversation around, right, the apocalypse too. I think in terms of perfectionism, in terms of, navigating the apocalypse, we, perfectionists are very good at staring down the void of all the bad things that can happen and how to avoid the failure and avoid the mistakes and avoid the bad things. And it's basically impossible to do that and live a rich life that feels good. I mean, that's like the major thing. That's why a lot of people come to me to work with me, because they're like, I've been doing things a certain way my entire life. I've gotten great success, right? The people I work with are like, I've got all the things on paper that are amazing, and I am not feeling the way I want to feel. Right. And so I'll just say, well, yeah, perfectionism has got you where you are, but it's not going to get you like where you want to go. So that's kind of the conversation. And I'm not here to demonize it. I'm not here to villainize it. I'm saying, yeah, awesome. Like these certain things, which are essentially survival mechanisms, have gotten you really far. And like, let's just change the orientation of it.
Okay. So yeah, for real. How does that, I was in a group last night, group with a capital G, a group last night that is a great support group helping people with really dysfunctional backgrounds find healing. I'm just a
Amazing.
huge fan of therapy. Um, and in that group, perfectionism was the topic, actually, kind of ironically now. So we're perfectionists because the way we were raised, the way our personalities are, or whatever. And yeah, that drive has helped us accomplish and overcome things. But truly, Audrey, like you just saying that, me hearing that, dialing back my level of perfectionism sounds like I'm dialing back the the engine that's made me successful, like whatever successful measure you call successful in your own life. What if I stop? I mean, truly, you saying that brings up fear in my mind, like in my heart. Is that going to collapse for me? Like, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. This is exactly, thank you for your honesty, right? That's exactly what people kind of go through is, all right, I've had this way of functioning. It's worked really well. I don't really love some of the side effects, right? I'm like, some of those side effects are not really working for me. But if I start to, is that going to make me less ambitious? Am I going to just like lie on my couch all day long and stare at the ceiling and like never accomplish anything else for the rest of my life? Feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to become lazy is like that can be like a really huge, like kind of trigger point for people. And it all makes sense. And one of the biggest, tools that I use with my coaching and with people in general, and perfectionists goes really, really well for perfectionists too, is experimentation. Because what it takes to shift orientation in our nervous systems, in our bodies, in the way we move through the world are tiny, small, and doable and repeatable shifts, right? That's the other thing with perfectionism is there's this kind of like one and done like mentality or feeling in our bodies sometimes where it's like, you got one shot to get it right? You send that one email, it better be perfect the first time. Cause if it's not, you're going to blow up that relationship or like,
Yeah.
right. So it's little tiny, small changes start to shift things. So we don't have to like, blow up your life and rebuild it in a Zen way overnight or something like that. Like that's not what we're talking about.
Okay. So rebuilding that though, like is, yeah. So the long process, let's talk about that. Yeah, this is really good. Like it really is because that perfectionism and I'm thinking things through and I'm just thinking how to say it. I'm just going to say it the way I say it. Group Coach Nation, you guys know, we're just going to shoot the crap straight here. So we all judge people. I hate that. It's like the worst part about being a human. Oh my gosh. I wish I was my dog because he doesn't seem to judge anyone. He does judge smaller dogs though. Isn't that interesting?
Everybody judges smaller dogs. Your dog.
Okay, so we all have this unfortunate little bit of judgmentalness in ourselves somehow. So as perfectionists, wherever we feel like we excel, it's hard for us to break the pattern of looking at someone else who's not as good as us in that area of life, whatever it is, and say, man, if they just do this or that, right? That's the stuff that scares me because the areas that I take comfort in that I'm personally good at are the things that I kind of hang my identity on sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the things that I don't want to get rid of because I'm all tangled up in that.
Yeah.
The long process that you're talking about, like how long does it take to start? I don't even know what I'm looking for. Do I get relief? Is there space? Is there more freedom to create and to engage with people? Like when perfectionism starts to take the back seat instead of the front seat, what happens? And how long does that start to take to get results or a feeling or?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I'm just going to say it depends on the person.
That's a stupid answer. Come on. Give me 8 weeks.
You want
8
an
weeks.
exact timeline? Are we talking about, weeks or months?
8 weeks to overcoming perfection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, when you start to create changes and you start to feel like things are shifting, that creates a feeling of empowerment, right? That creates a feeling of like things are changing. I mean, obviously there's an impatience where it's like, I want things to change overnight and be perfectly the way I want them to be, right? That's the thing with perfectionism. It's like perfectionism all the way down. It's like, I want to not be perfect the perfect way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what it comes down to is it is a common thing. And this is the thing that's really important for people to understand too. I think that people take on, like everything, there's a certain level of like hyper responsibility people can take on sometimes, right? Where it's like, I have created everything within me. We are influenced by media. We are influenced by our society. We are influenced by our family, right? We are influenced by our external circumstances, right? These are all things that have had impact on us throughout our lives and will continue to have impact on us, right? So there's a really, really high priority put on accomplishment and what we do for work and productivity, right? And all of those sort of things, which is where we really start to orient towards, because it's been the thing that we orient towards our entire lives often, right? And like you're saying, identity, we get kind of caught up in identity. So one of the things that I really am interested in getting people more oriented towards is just themselves as a human, right? As a physical body on the planet, just moving through the planet. Like even you and I, right? We are in completely different locations, but here we are having this conversation. I'm a physical body. I'm standing. I'm looking at a screen. I can hear, I mentioned to Chris earlier that they're doing road work where I am. So I can like hear the road work where I am. And we're having this conversation. So starting to orient just towards like our own bodies and the information that comes here starts to create some distance between like what we do and accomplish and what that means about us versus like who we are as a physical human being moving through the world. And having a little bit of that distance just makes things, it gives you a little bit of air to breathe and to think and to make decisions from, and just a different, or again, just orientation, what we are orienting towards starts to shift. I'm curious what you think about that, because this is all kind of, Chris and I have not talked about this before, so this is all like a new, fresh.
Yeah, you're watching a live therapy session right now. So, yeah, here's what I think about that. I think, okay, hear a little hope in that. And by the way, I'm just a little background here for Audrey. You and our Group Coach Nation probably knows more about this just because they hang out with me a lot. I'm a huge fan of therapy. I've been through a lot of therapy personally, and I'm not a very woo or spiritual person though. So I kind of have a weird mix of that. So what I feel is a little bit of hope. Like, hey, there's some space to be had in my head and my heart if I was able to step back from some of the pressure I am really putting on myself. And where that goes for me typically is, for me, freedom equals more life. I have one tattoo, Audrey. It's right here on the inside of this arm, and it says free. I got that 4 or 5 years ago, and I was recovering from stuff and kind of finally getting free from my own self. And that space sounds free. The stuff you're talking about sounds free. And I know for me personally, when there's more freedom in my life, in my head, my production goes up. My connection with friends and family goes up. My enjoyment of a vacation goes up. Like everything starts to go the right direction when I try less in a weird way.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. You know, perfectionism is very cognitive oriented. It's very intellectual, right? People who are perfectionists are often just like they want to figure things out. They want to understand things. They want to get it, right? There's a lot of thinking going on very often. And this is not true of everybody, but it is true of a lot of people who, if I could figure it out, if I could get it, then I could shift it. I could change it. It could be different. And my suggestion is, okay, yeah, that's information, but like, let's get a little bit out of the intellect, because we can spin on that all day long. And like, let's get into from the neck down. Like, let's start to connect with this physicality, with our nervous system, which is often like driving the bus essentially. And our brains are often coming along for the ride, right? Often people talk about mindset, they're working from the head down. My suggestion is, let's connect from the neck down and then start creating some influence upstairs.
Oh, that's so true. It's so real. There's a book. We're just diving deep into stuff here, right? There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. I don't know if you ever read that book.
Bessel van der Kolk. That was a book. That's a life-changing book. Yeah.
Look at you, right? Oh my gosh, so true. So, folks, if you don't know what that's all about, ultimately, your body is keeping the score of your mind and your life. What's going on around you? If you're having heart palpitations, you think you're having a heart attack. If you're getting tight, tense neck, you're feeling stuff in your body. You're getting gut pains and can't quite, survive that. A lot of times that's our bodies just trying to flesh out, for lack of a better term, what's going on in our headspace, right?
Yeah, and I think this actually brings me right to the apocalypse. So let's go right to the apocalypse.
So if you got COVID, it's because your body was keeping this. No.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's been something that's been really interesting about, this time period. First of all, it's so interesting. Like, I've kind of come at these things in different ways. And along with Bessel van der Kolk's work, I also want to give a shout out to, especially for the female women members of your group, is Call of the Wild by Kimberly Ann Johnson.
Yeah.
She does a lot of somatic work, and she specifically works with women, and she's amazing. I've done courses with her, and she does a lot of work for the nervous system. So I just want to give a shout out to her and her work also. The body is brilliant, right? And the body is built for change, right? Over all these years and years and years and years, we have been navigating change, right? And that's what we're built for. And there's certain like functions in our body. Our body is always trying to come back to homeostasis, right? The body is basically always trying to find its way home. It's trying to find that level playing field. And depending on our history, like what that looks like, everybody's body will do that differently. And sometimes that comes up in ways that we like don't like, right? And a lot of it, and that's when we can really beat up on ourselves. And it's like, okay, but there's wisdom here. The body is doing a certain thing for a certain reason, right? The body doesn't just do things willy-nilly. There's some reason it's doing it. And so with the way that we've been having to function dysfunctionally around this time period has been really tough on our bodies, right? It's been tough on us mentally. It's been tough on us physically. And one of the things that happens in our systems is our body tries to be really efficient, right? Our body wants to get things done efficiently because it saves energy, and that just makes sense, right? Your body wants to be as efficient as possible, which is why your body finds grooves in mental patterns, right? And chemical patterns, like why certain moods tend to get grooved, because again, the body's trying to be efficient. Same thing happens with chronic stress or chronic stressors. The body starts to say, hey, I'm going to start to anticipate how I need to handle this, right? But when the thing starts to be chronic over and over again, the body it doesn't become this like, oh, I've learned and now I've gotten better at handling this thing. What starts to happen is our baseline, which is usually down here, starts to rise. So instead of our body trying to bring us down here, our body starts to bring a new baseline here, which is when we start to get a lot of those physical symptoms, right? That's when way our body chemically is working, the way we're mentally working. So when I talk to people now, and I feel this in myself, my capacity is so much lower than it's ever been at any part of my life. And especially my capacity for BS, right? Like even pushing myself in a way that I used to be able to, it is limited. I just don't have that kind of capacity anymore. So I just want to like put that out there if anybody else is dealing with that. Because again, sometimes we think of ourselves as having these like personal failings, and it's important to talk about the collective things that are happening in our environment and our lives that have impact on us. And we have to, again, navigate that. We have to meet ourselves where we're at and navigate it there, as opposed to, again, the perfectionism standards, which were too high to begin with, and now are certainly going to be way too high for where we're at.
I love that. Love everything you're saying. And yeah, like Audrey, you and I both speak a lot on digital platforms. I mean, everybody, I guess, shifted to that the past few years. We both lead our own communities. We both have things going on that put us in a place where we look like we're out there and doing a lot of stuff. And I don't know about you, but for me, like I'm intentionally having to re-engage with real people in real space, like the group I was in last night, so that I can reconnect, because my threshold for real interaction, for people, for my own ability to emote in real space has gotten pretty weak. And here's the judgy part of that. I've not had anybody tell me this, okay? I live around just wonderful humans. And honestly, folks, let's be honest. Most of the humans on this planet are just freaking awesome people, right? There's a few people who make a lot of waves, but go cheer people on, and we can be cheered on by people. There's some great people out there. I've not had anybody tell me this, but myself tells me, oh, Chris, if you weren't such a germaphobe, if you hadn't been extra careful during the pandemic, if you weren't one of those types, you'd already be over it, and you'd be out there going to whatever parties, conventions, trips, whatever. We played it pretty safe at our house, all right? That's just the way we did it. And I want to judge that. And I want to say it's my fault that I'm struggling with this. But giving ourselves some grace to just be where we are and be who you are right now in this moment. Just take a breath, sit on that, rest in it, and then sort out what you want to do about it next, but not comparing or setting yourself up for any kind of grade around that.
One of the phrases I hear so often is, well, I shouldn't have to, or I shouldn't need, right? Like, I shouldn't have to take time off. I shouldn't need this space. I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't need to. I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't need to, right? We have this mentality that, again, this is an orientation, which I think is a sort of a collective orientation towards like a machine-like ability to do things, and we get very judgy. We're like, well, I shouldn't need to like take some extra time, or I shouldn't need to, have somebody affirm what I'm saying, or I shouldn't have to, right? I shouldn't have to like, find ways to connect. I should just be able to deal with this. There are all of these things we tell ourselves, like, if only I was different, then things would be different. It's like, okay, well, yeah. So again, it's like, that sort of that, the word is compassion. And I think that some people come by that easily and some people don't. So a lot of it, I will talk about, if compassion is a word that gets you a little bit squidgy, which for some people, they're like, yeah, no, that's too soft. If I get too compassionate for myself, then I'm going to lie on the couch all day long and stare at the ceiling, never get anything done. But a little bit of, like you said, grace, yes, is a wonderful word. And just like starting to get it, right? Get yourself like, well, I don't like that I need this extra time, but it makes sense that I do based on all of these other factors that are happening, right? And I think that that's why it can be helpful when you have a coach or when you have an outside party that loves you and is looking at you and can kind of see the bigger picture, because, right, it's that whole thing, we can't see the label from inside the jar situation. And we are so much more often able to give that grace to other people, but it is very difficult to give it to ourselves.
That's so true. Wow. All right, what do you have over there at Fortitude and Flow? Here's the domain, folks. By the way, her domain is Fortitude and Flow. Got it here on the screen. We'll drop it in the comments as well for you listeners and drivers, so you can just click on it later.
Yeah.
What are you doing over there? Like, how are you helping people? And everybody in Group Coach Nation, listen to this in two ways. Listen to this and like, hey, do I need Audrey's help? Obviously, if you do, reach out to Audrey, right? She's obviously helping people in a way that I never can. And two, listen to what she's doing. Like, she has a brand. She has a marketing piece. She has like a direction and a flow to all this. So look at her as a professional and notice how she's playing the game too. So anyway, what are you doing over there at Fortitude and Flow?
It's a good question, actually. Well, generally, right, my main thing is that I work one-on-one with people. That's my main thing, is I get in and I work one-on-one, do some one-on-one coaching work with people. And I do a lot with the perfectionist archetypes, which is something we haven't talked about, but I did a big series of interviews with people who self-identified as perfectionists. And I just reached out generally, like, to my general network and just social media, like maybe made one or two posts and said, hey, I'm working on my book and I'm looking to just have a few interviews. And I now have over like 60 hours of interview footage with people who wanted to talk about this. Right. So that's the other thing, is like, you are in great company if you identify with this. Yeah. The entrepreneur space, brilliant minds, right? There's a lot of really cool people in this space.
Yeah. You had me at brilliant minds. Yeah.
Yeah. So
brilliant minds. Oh, that's me. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Brilliant, perfectly crafted minds. So that I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, and it's funny in terms of what we're talking about now. I got to the end of 2021 and I took some time off, and I came back in 2022, and I'm a little bit like scrapping, actually, a lot of the things that I was thinking about at the end of the year. And I'm actually in a period of, like, January for me is actually a period of reevaluation. Because I feel like, just like you were saying, my desire for connection and conversations and like genuine human interaction is something that I want more of, right? I want to engage in more of that. And so how can I actually shift things in my business in a way that makes that possible. And so one of the concepts that I've been thinking about is this concept of finding joy in the apocalypse, because that's the other orientation that I think it's going to be helpful for us, is start orienting towards the things that actually, and connecting to the things that are actually joyful for us, that are actually positive for us, that actually light us up, and be with the fact that this is a very difficult time period. Like, I'm not talking about toxic positivity. I'm not saying like everything's fine. It's like everything's burning behind you, right? We're not talking about that, but we're saying everything's burning behind me. And oh my gosh, I found all this water that's going to help me deal with this particular situation. Or, oh my gosh, everybody's rallied together and I feel connected. So I have some plans to actually start having some conversations with people about what the apocalypse is for them, what it means to them, and how they are finding their joy, because I think that is the conversation that we need next. And the other thing that's happening is collaboration, right? I think that anybody especially, I'd be interested to see people who are listening, if anybody identifies as like a solo business owner or a solopreneur or somebody who works primarily by themselves, how they're feeling now. Because I've been noticing that myself and a lot of my colleagues are like, how can we do something together, right? How can we collaborate? Because people are wanting to share the workload essentially, and like share each other's stories and share. So there's a lot of, I think, coming together now where people want to connect, they want to be with each other, and they want to support each other, because it has been such a difficult time period that I think people are starting to tap back into this, like, this is not a competition. This is a collective, like we can all be together in this and thrive in some way, even given the circumstances. So that's a lot of what's kind of shifting around for me in January. So I'm taking a little bit of time to kind of reevaluate and figure out what that means for me going forward.
I really love that. I really do. That like so resonates with me. And I'm seeing that here at Group Coach Nation, like different than ever before. I'm seeing so many people here collaborating with each other, and that I know there's probably personalities and past history with collaborations, and everybody has their own opinion of all of that and how they want to collaborate. But it's like, it's totally a thing that's stronger than I've ever seen before. And we haven't, there's nothing that me and my team at Group Coach Nation have done to drive collaboration any different than ever before. It's just like, we're just seeing it. People need each other right now.
Yeah. Totally. Absolutely.
Love that. So as you're taking a moment to think and plan and strategize and kind of get back to the center point for you and all this, how do people follow you along in that journey? Obviously, going to a static website might not be the way to do it, but is there do you do a newsletter? Do you do a show? Like, how do people follow along with that?
Yeah. So my newsletter is actually the best way to stay in touch. That's the thing that I'm most consistent at. And right now I'm actually not really doing much on social media because I am sort of an internal phase, but I am reporting to my newsletter what's going on. And it's been really, there's been a lot of back and forth with people, which has been really cool. So, so you can do that on the website, fortitudeandflow.com. And also, if you're interested in exploring the archetypes, if you go to fortitudeandflow.com/perfectionist, that will get you into the sort of the mentality of how I talk about the archetypes. And then that will also, connect people to my email community as well.
Cool. Love that.
Yeah.
fortitudeandflow.com/perfectionist.
Yeah. Yep.
Make sure you get that right, folks.
That literally will bring you somewhere different if you don't get that
right. That's so fun. Audrey, thanks for investing in our hearts. I appreciate that. And not just our, so many times, and all you folks who've been on our show in the past, if you're listening in right now, we love every one of you. And most of us talk about business form and function and the next marketing thing and the next way to close a deal and all that stuff. And like, this is so the stuff that keeps the engine fired up. Otherwise you burn out. Love
100%.
this.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, no, I really appreciate this conversation. And I think there will be more of this, just as people are finding more collaboration. I think that the conversations around tactics are going to become a little bit more secondary to those conversations around like the human at the center of all the tactics too. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, everyone listening in, Audrey Holst is awesome. Obviously, go check her out over at fortitudeandflow.com. As always, we're here at groupcoachnation.com or wherever you're finding this. Ask your questions. If you have more questions about what we've talked about today, not just building your own high-ticket mastermind as usual, but this heart-oriented stuff, perfectionism, overcoming this the thing we've all been involved in the past few years together collectively on the planet. If you have questions about that, reach out in this comment thread and we'll get Audrey connected to that as well.
Yeah,
Audrey,
I would love to answer the questions, and I'm hit up my inbox. I'm into it.
love that. Thank you so much, Audrey. Like, truly appreciate your time and investment with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. This was great.
As always, everybody, do work, get results. Obviously, don't do it perfectly. Just get the right strategy for you. If it's your head game or if it's the game of business, get the right strategy and do the work. Start going down the path. That's the only way to get results. So get after it, folks. We'll talk soon.